Okay, so first of all, I want to thank everybody who's been watching these videos. It has not been the most successful series on YouTube of all time. Most of these get between 50 and 100 views, and that's fine. It's very much appreciated, everybody who checks these out. It's been a labor of love, and it's given me something to do in a year that has this has been great. Everything else has stunk. Thank goodness for this. I don't know where I would be without this. Thank you guys so much for watching it. Julio. It's time to talk about Julio, and it just so happens to be Julio's 23rd birthday. Julio Rodríguez, if you happen to be watching this, a very happy birthday to someone who has a chance to be, in my humble estimation, the greatest Seattle Mariner of all time. We'll talk about his season, but first we'll talk about Simply Seattle. Simply Seattle provides the very best in Seattle sports gear. Awesome stuff for the Mariners, Kraken, Seahawks, Storm. Anything Seattle sports related, you're going to find it at Simply Seattle. Once you find it, use code MOLLYWHOP15, MOLLYWHOP15. Takes 15% off your order. There's awesome stuff, all sorts of sizes. Doesn't matter gender, doesn't matter what you're looking for. You're going to find it at simplyseattle.com. Link in the description to make it very easy for you. But once again, thank you so much, Simply Seattle. So Julio Rodríguez, in his second MLB season as a 22-year-old up until today. And if you're watching this video not on December 29th, hey, happy birthday, Julio. That didn't make any sense, but you know what I'm saying. 155 games, 714 plate appearances, 275, 333, 485, 32 homers, 37 stolen bases, 103 RBI. How do you talk about Julio Rodríguez? It's hard because there just aren't many talents like this. The Mariners have had some really good players. They haven't had enough good players, but they've had some great players. Are you kidding me? That jersey right behind me, that guy, one of the greatest center fielders of all time. Alex Rodriguez, Edgar Martinez, Randy Johnson, Robinson Cano, Adrian Beltre, Nelson Cruz. I can go on and on. For as disappointing as the Mariners franchise is in terms of results, there have been some unbelievably good players. Did I forget to mention Edgar Martinez, by the way? Edgar Martinez, Jay Buhner. So many great Seattle Mariners. I truly believe that Julio Rodríguez has a chance to be the very best of them. You just don't do what Julio Rodríguez has done over these first two seasons and not think that he has a chance to be one of the all-time greats. It sounds so hyperbolic. And again, we're talking about Hall of Famers or guys who would be Hall of Famers if not for, I think he has a chance to be the best of them. In large part, I think he has a chance to be the best of them because he's going to be here for so long. Like Julio Rodríguez, whether you like him or don't like him, and if you don't like him, what's going on? No matter what you think about him, he's going to be here for a while. It's very difficult for me to imagine him being traded because the only way you'd be dealing him is if, like, he demanded it, said he wouldn't play for the team, and that's not happening anytime soon. Or if Julio Rodríguez somehow becomes bad at baseball and the Mariners have to, with their cheap ownership group, decides we can't afford to pay this. Can't see that happening either. So one way or another, Julio Rodríguez is going to be here for a very long time. And at the end of the day, I think that the 10 to 15 years he plays here will make him the greatest Seattle Mariner of all time. Let's look at some of the savant numbers because they're just stupid. Average exit velocity of 92.7 miles an hour. I kind of figured it would be higher than the 95th percentile. I'm not complaining. Hard hit percentage of 52. 95th percentile. Barreled the baseball 11.9% of the time. That's in the 77th percentile. Expected slugging, 79th percentile. Expected batting average, 82nd percentile. That's just unbelievable for someone who literally turned 23 today, December 29th, just to clarify again. I mean, that's just so special. His offensive upside, we're not even talking about the other things yet. Just as a hitter, just standing up there and going like this is special. There's no other word for it. He is special, and he's going to get better. There were some numbers here, though, that were great. And we'll talk about his month-by-month stuff. He's got to get better at swinging at pitches outside of the zone. And by that, I mean he's got to stop swinging at so many pitches outside of the zone. 37.4% of the time, he swung at a pitch outside the strike zone. Whiffed in 28.2% of his swings. Struck out in 24.5% of his at-bats. Only walked 6.6% of the times in his at-bats. Those are well below average number. And the chase rate, that's beyond well below average. It's pretty simple. Julio Rodríguez tried to do too much in 2023. And a lot of times he succeeded. A lot of times. But when he failed, it wasn't a question of talent. It wasn't a question of whether or not he has the will or the fortitude or any of that nonsense. He just tried to do too dang much. And I'm not surprised. He was 22. It hurt. There's no doubt of there. I'm not. Sometimes I feel like I come up across as a Julio apologist, which is a weird thing to say for somebody who's done what Julio has done. It's not an insult to say you tried to do too much. It's not an insult to say that Julio Rodríguez needs to get better. He's 22. I'm going to repeat that a bunch, except it's wrong now because he's 23. Happy birthday, Julio. But there was no denying that offensively, Julio Rodríguez at times tried to do too much, especially, I think, in the first half of the season and to end the year, too. Really struggled over the last week. Clearly was trying to put the team on his shoulders. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. But you look at the numbers he had in the second half of the year, and that's 317 plate appearances. That is a large sample. First half of the year, just to give it to you, 721 OPS, 13 homers, 22 stolen bases. Second half of the year, 308, 363, 578, 19 homers, 15 stolen bases in 68 games. To do that as a 22-year-old, it's really hard for me to complain about anything Julio Rodríguez does because of that age and because he's so fun to watch. June was tough. June was really hard, and so was September. So April, he doesn't get off to a great start. He's got a 743 OPS. May, 755 OPS. June, he strikes out in 27 of his 110 plate appearances, and he only hits 220, 291, 330. 3 homers. But then in July, 293, 353, 472, 4 homers, 6 stolen bases. That's an 825 OPS. And you can just kind of feel that something special is about to happen. I've never seen a Seattle Mariner play better than Julio Rodríguez in the month of August. And I've seen some really good players. I've seen Edgar's postseason run. I've seen Ichiro Suzuki. How the heck do you forget about Ichiro Suzuki? Felix Hernandez. Still think that Julio has the chance to be the best. Julio Rodríguez in August hit 429, 474, 724, 7 homers, 11 stolen bases. Yeah, it stinks that he wasn't great in those first couple of months. And it didn't help, obviously. I've never seen a player carry a team the way Julio Rodríguez did in August. And there were lots of guys playing well. T. Oscar, we went over it. It was just scorching hot in August. My son, JP Crawford, was playing well. The pitching was pretty darn good. Lots of people were good in August. Nobody was that good. And then, in September, it's a 773 OPS, but clearly just trying to do too much. I think one of the things that so the level of expectations for Julio were unfair, just totally unfair. And of course, I'm not saying he's beyond criticism, but it sure would have been nice if he had more help. Julio would take the blame. Julio will tell you that, he has to be better and all that stuff. And he's not wrong. He's not wrong. But boy, putting that kind of pressure on a 22-year-old, that's rough. That's real rough. See if there's any other splits. I'll just have a conversation with you guys as we're doing this. Oh, yeah. I wanted to talk about this. So look, Julio hit second in 404 plate appearances last year. Julio hit third in 84 plate appearances last year. And he led off in 45 games and 213 plate appearances. I want to give you the numbers by each place in the batting order. Hitting third, he hit 321, 369, 551. That's a 920 OPS with 4 homers and 5 stolen bases. Leading off, Julio Rodríguez hit 281, 329, 513. That's an 841 OPS with 10 homers and 12 stolen bases. Julio Rodríguez batting second, 88 games, 404 plate appearances, 263, 329, 447. I'm about to choke. Hold on one sec. Had a cashew before I went on here, and yeah. Has anyone died recording a YouTube video? That's a 776 OPS, and he struck out 95 times with 29 walks. I don't want to go too nuts here. I think it's pretty clear that Julio Rodríguez is most comfortable hitting first. There's just something special about it. I've used the word special maybe too much. No, I haven't. I couldn't possibly use it too much for this dude. And I get it. JP Crawford gets on base at a much higher rate. He draws more walks. I would be so tempted to have Julio Rodríguez leading off next year and having JP Crawford hit second. Or move Julio into the third spot and having a couple of guys on base ahead of him. I just think there's a comfort level for Julio in that leadoff spot. It works pretty darn well batting third too. Now that's a small sample size. And I get it. Most teams now want their best hitter hitting second. You want a guy who can get on base hitting ahead of the guy who is your best hitter. I get it. But I also think that you have to look at things kind of similar to how Atlanta looks at them. There's something about that special offensive player hitting leadoff. And you see a lot of successful teams doing it. They're not the best on base percentage guys. Not that Ronald Acuna is afraid of getting on base or doesn't have a high on base percentage, but he's not a walk machine. There's something about it. And if you are going to not hit Julio in that leadoff spot, I want a couple of guys who can get on base and give me that 3-run homer. You're giving Julio less at bats when you move him into the third spot. I get that. Totally understand. But I want Julio hitting at the top of the lineup. And I just think he is a much more, and I realized he was struggling from hitting in that leadoff spot, and JP Crawford was great after they moved him down. I want Julio leading off. And it's not like Julio was bad in the second spot. He just wasn't even close to as good in the leadoff spot or the third spot. I have no, other than the numbers I just gave you, which you can just absolutely destroy by just calling them small sample. It's just a feel thing for me. I would want Julio Rodríguez leading off as much as possible. When Julio Rodríguez led off an inning in 2023, which he did 168 times, he hit 314, 363, 628. I want to give Julio as much plate appearances as possible, or I want him to have that chance to drive in as many runs as possible. Just me. I know I said I wasn't going to talk too much about 2024 in the last couple, but I just can't help it. Oh, by the way, that's just the offense. Julio Rodríguez has developed into a special defensive player. I've been wrong about a lot of stuff. When you do what I do for a living, like where you're writing about prospects and you're projecting and all that good stuff, you're going to be wrong quite a bit. I'm right quite a bit too. I would like to think that if I wasn't right quite a bit, they wouldn't really give me the chance to keep doing it. His ability to get to anything and everything, it helped the Mariners so much. And it's why, for everybody who wants to talk about JP Crawford, my son, I love you. Everyone who wants to talk about how JP Crawford was the MVP of the team, I think it's nonsense. Because you take what Julio did offensively, and then you add what he did defensively. It's not even close for me. I want to see him be more accurate with his throws. I think some of the Julio can't hit a cutoff man stuff was absolute nonsense. It's just some people looking for something to complain about, if I'm being completely honest with you. I'm not saying that's not important. I'm just saying, come on. Sometimes I think people like to say stuff like that because they desperately want to keep relevant. And I'm not saying that it's not important to hit the cutoff man. You don't want errant throws. You don't want throws to get over infielders. Only bad things can happen. Or you don't want throws that go into bases where you have no chance to get the runner and somebody advances. I think some of it was complaining for the sake of complaining. But He can be better. And he can be better on some routes too. There's still center field is a really hard position. A really hard position. And Julio, I think, is still learning some of the finite things, which is crazy because he's already as good as it gets in center field. He has a chance to be one of the best defensive players ever. He has that kind of speed and that kind of tracking ability. And oh, by the way, then you add in his value on the bases once he gets on base. Fantastic base runner. So few tube lands. It wasn't perfect. And there were times where I was very flustered by Julio Rodríguez. We've talked ad nauseum about how expectations change stuff. My expectations for Julio Rodríguez are completely unrealistic. I go up there. Whenever he goes up there, I'm wondering, well, is it going to be a double, a triple? What are you going to do? And when it's not, you wonder what the heck's gone wrong. It's not fair to him, but he has created that kind of expectation. But to think that he could have done more while playing at an MVP level for a lot of the season, over a third of it, as a 22-year-old. We're so blessed. We are so blessed. And, I guess we'll close with this too. I see a lot of people, not a lot, enough, who are like, well, how can you call the Mariners cheap when he signed Julio Rodríguez to that kind of extension? I don't want to make this a 45-minute video, but that's nonsense. The Mariners saved a ton of money signing Julio Rodríguez to this extension. Was it in 2023 and 2024? No. But in 2025, through that thing, it's going to save them hundreds of millions of dollars. Because if Julio Rodríguez hits free agency in his prime, you're talking about $1 billion deal. Easy. So, I want to make this abundantly clear too. I'm not saying that Julio Rodríguez is hurting. But the idea that the Mariners didn't save money with the Julio Rodríguez deal really irks me. They realized that by paying him a penny today, they're going to save lots of dollars. Lots and lots of dollars. I could have used a number better than penny, but you know what I mean, I hope. Yeah. Stop it with the Mariners are obviously, yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. This will probably be the last video before the new year because unless the Mariners do something, I'll, do something. But from the bottom of my heart, and I will do my best not to cry here, thank you. Thank you. And happy birthday, Julio Rodríguez. We are so blessed.